Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. We're coming to you outside of Great Bend in Barton County, where the launch of cattletrace.org took place. On the program, we'll hear from Kansas Governor Jeff Colyer, Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Kansas, Dr. McClaskey, and big 1st District Congressman Roger Marshall get their take on this innovative situation when it comes to tracing how cattle move across not only the state of Kansas, but beyond. We'll also have features from Kansas Wheat and the Kansas Farm Bureau, and our weekly updates from the Kansas Livestock Association and Paragon Ag Advisors. Another good show. Stay with us. You're watching the Kansas Ag Report.
Closed captioning brought to you by Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com. Kansas Livestock Association, supporting our members' business interests to meet consumers' demands. KLA.org.
Well, cattletrace.org is something that has been unique, and it's a starter program here in the state of Kansas, and lots of dignitaries were outside here at Barton County Feeders, Great Bend, Ellenwood area, and Dr. Roger Marshall was here, and we asked him some of his thoughts. Cattletrace.org was announced this week in Great Bend, and 1st District Congressman Roger Marshall, who represents this area, in fact his hometown, give your first impressions of this leading program in the state of Kansas.
Well, of course, I'm proud to do it in my own backyard. The cattle folks here in Kansas have always been leaders in the industry, despite what the folks from Nebraska say. So we're excited to be leading on an issue on this traceability issue. I think that a lot of our consumers want this, and it's a good response to what our market demands.
Talk about the unique partnership, not only private, state government, federal government, and other folks.
You bet. So I'd like to think the USDA is the most user-friendly, customer-friendly department in Washington, D.C., and I think this is a great example. They're working with our Secretary of Agriculture in Kansas, as well as down here the private entrepreneurs. They've done lots of work together. KLA, of course, is the glue that brings everybody together. So I think this will be a successful organization.
Let's talk about another issue, the Farm Bill. The Senate finally got it done. The House has it done after the Independence Day. What do you think the final version might be on the Farm Bill?
Well, I think that we can go to conference now anytime, but it sounds like it's going to be an August-September issue. I'm very optimistic. There are some minor differences, mainly around the work requirements for food stamps on the House side that the Senate doesn't have. But boy, beyond that, I think the Title I funding, the crop insurance looks very much the same. Maybe a little bit of issues to get through on some of the conservation projects. But I think that we're very, very proud of this bill, and we'll get it to the President in September.
The other issue, and you've been in the middle of, is the immigration issue. Let's go twofold. One, agriculture, the vote that was held this past week, really didn't go anywhere. Is immigration reform, especially in doing with agriculture, is that done for now?
Well, that's what everyone would have you to believe, but first of all, losing that bill was one of the worst days as a legislator I've had so far. I'm horribly disappointed. I thought it was 3 steps forward for DACA kids, for border security, as well as perhaps for agriculture. The leadership has still promised me a vote on the agriculture guest worker visa in July, but I'd like to, if we're going to vote on it, I'd like to find the vote. So I got my work cut ahead of me here in July.
The other thing, just a few days ago, you were in Mexico, or on the Mexican-American border. What can be done there? It seems like many folks are saying the immigration system is clearly broken.
It's absolutely broken. This has been broken for at least 30 years. Nothing gets fixed out there with a better border wall, border security. So that's step number one. And then we need a lot more technology as well down there. We need more judges. We need more officers. But I would just want to reassure the Americans, the people that I saw were being cared for very well. They've stopped the separation of children from their parents. And we have to be able to figure out how to do security and have this compassionate heart as well. And I think we can do it.
Last thing, the rest of the legislative calendar, since the Farm Bill has been done, that's been a lot of focus, what we've thought about. Any other big things other than just getting the budgets passed?
Well, I still think healthcare and infrastructure are setting out there for us to work on, along with immigration. I don't think the American public wants us to go through a November election without dealing with those issues better.
That's Kansas 1st District Congressman Dr. Roger Marshall. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up. You're watching the Kansas Ag Report.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Livestock Association, supporting our members' business interests to meet consumers' demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com.
All over the country, more and more communities are making the change to biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil. And the decision continues, improving the health and welfare for millions of Americans while adding billions to our national economy.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Kansas Ag Report coming to you from Barton County this week for the launch of cattletrace.org. Kansas Governor Jeff Colyer says this is something very important to the state of Kansas when it comes to economic viability. Governor Jeff Colyer now joins us at the launch of cattletrace.org. Talk about how important this is for the state of Kansas.
This is a real economic driver because livestock and our livestock herds are so important to the economy. If you have a great traceability program, that is tremendous for us for the export market and for the domestic market. We see this as a real game changer.
Partnerships between not only the state, the feds, local, I mean, that has to make you feel good and moving forward because of everybody in the financial situation everyone seems to be in.
You know, this is hard to do, and we want to get it right. And so by doing this in a pilot program, but what we did is we really got producers together and really let them be the lead in this. And by partnering both the federal government and also our local producers, I think we're going to get it right.
Teaming and basically the lead agency, the Kansas Department of Agriculture, there's a lot of security measures. This isn't just something that's going to be there that's accessible to everybody. It's simply traceability.
Yeah, and it's simply about traceability, and it's simply about making sure that people have confidence in our product. And you know, recently I've been working very hard on exports to a number of countries and across the United States. And what they're telling me is that this sort of project there is really going to be a game changer for us. And if we do it right, we'd be smart and just very straightforward about it, it'll be a good project.
So with this pilot project, what are you hoping that comes of it? I mean, you help the Kansas cattle producers, their bottom line, open up more markets?
That's exactly what this is about. It's more markets, and it's a quality market. One of the things that we have the opportunity to do is to get a premium, and a premium on Kansas beef, and that's what this is about.
How much time? Well, let's talk about the overall economy. As you know, we keep hearing good reports. The state of Kansas, tax receipts come on in. Right now, it looks like those fall crops are going to be great for the state of Kansas. Have we seen a turnaround in the Kansas economy now for a sustainable time?
I think the Kansas economy is starting to go in the right direction. But ag, we have real commodity prices. So for us in the long run, what our focus is a value add to all of our products. And that way, we're not so beholden to what the price of wheat is alone. I think we can get ourselves in a pretty good spot. But I want to make sure that the entire Kansas economy is growing, that rural Kansas in particular is. I'm from western Kansas, grew up here 5 generations, and Kansas is not going to be doing well if all of Kansas, particularly our rural parts, aren't.
It's Governor Jeff Colyer. We'll take a break and come back with Jackie McClaskey, the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Kansas, in just a moment.
This segment brought to you by Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and Liberty Link that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
All over the country, more and more communities are making the change to biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil. And the decision continues, improving the health and welfare for millions of Americans while adding billions to our national economy.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Welcome back to the program. Ag Secretary Jackie McClaskey talks about kind of the beginnings and how this whole cattletrace.org came into play. Talking now with Kansas Secretary of Agriculture Jackie McClaskey, the launch of cattletrace.org. Talk about the process to get to the day like today.
Well, I'd say, first of all, for a lot of people here in celebrating today's announcement, it's multiple years in coming. For me, this project really started in 2015 when we were challenged by the Governor's Economic Council to outline a strategic plan to growing agriculture. And as we sat down with feeders and cow-calf folks across the state, they said, Jackie, we really got to talk about traceability, and we got to stop just not talking about it, we got to do something. That then led this fall to a change in the KLA policy, and that policy mirrored what we had put in our growth project that we had heard from folks, that it's time to really talk about a traceability system. And bringing those folks together, we talked about a plan and what that could look like and what a pilot project could look like. And then we asked the Kansas legislature and Governor Colyer for support to come up with the funds to fund our share, ask USDA to match it, and we are headed down the road to make this happen.
Okay, so what happens now? It's launched, and so what does that mean?
Right now we're looking for participants. We're looking for participants at each stage in the beef sector, so we need auction markets, feedlots, cow-calf folks, everyone along that chain to sign up and participate in the project. You know, in the worst case scenario, we have to turn people away. We want to have about 55,000 cattle in this pilot project. Once we get everybody signed up, we will begin the process of issuing tags and collecting data on where those tags are, and then utilize the system to test our ability to trace those animals when they move.
What makes this different than other traceability programs that maybe have been started or tried before?
Well, first of all, it's really being led by industry. In some of the cases where there's been a traceability system that's come out, it's really been government saying, hey, this is the way that we're going to do it. Industry, get on board. This is the opposite. Industry is the one that really created the momentum and started it and talked to us and then allowed us to start partnering with them. So that's the first big change. The second big change is that while in the end, you know, someone will have to set policy over voluntary or mandatory, this itself is a voluntary pilot project. So we're not telling people they have to participate. We're asking folks who want to participate. And then I would say the third biggest change is we truly are talking about all cattle and really trying to think about the cow-calf person and how it's going to affect their operation with just as much attention as we are the feedlots.
So what happens at the end of this pilot program? Then what happens? How does it affect Kansas cattle producers?
Well, and my hope is there really is never an end. This pilot project maybe turns into a second pilot project that turns into a permanent program, and maybe one pilot project and then a permanent program. But I truly believe with the team we have put together that Cattle Trace is here to stay, and I think before too long that it will not be something that is seen as a Kansas project. It will be a multi-state project. In fact, quite honestly, we have states reaching out to us now saying, will you let us participate? So it's pretty exciting.
It's Dr. Jackie McClaskey, who is the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Kansas. Stay with us. Coming up, reports from Kansas Wheat and the Kansas Farm Bureau in just a moment.
Spring
Spring is sprung, and Premier Farm and Home has what you need to keep your yard crabgrass free throughout the season. With a complete line of pre-emergents, you can stop crabgrass before it starts. Premier Farm and Home, 900 Southwest University Boulevard, or find them on the web at heycow.com.
Flour milling executives from sub-Saharan Africa are in the U.S. Plains states to learn about the hard red winter wheat harvest, crop quality, and value. U.S. Wheat Associates, the U.S. wheat industry's export market development organization, hopes to export more U.S. hard red winter wheat to these countries. To ensure buyers receive information about hard red winter wheat, U.S. Wheat Associates brought a team of flour milling executives from Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, and Liberia to Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, June 11th through the 21st. While in Kansas, they toured the Graincraft Wheat Quality Lab in Wichita, the Kansas Wheat Innovation Center and IGP Institute in Manhattan, and Cargill Elevator and Wheat Harvest in Salina. Aaron Harries, Vice President of Research and Operations at Kansas Wheat, traveled with the group. He said Nigerian flour millers continue to be extremely good customers for Kansas wheat farmers. About half of the Kansas wheat crop is exported every year, and Nigeria has been a top buyer in recent years. U.S. hard red winter wheat remains the main type of flour to make instant noodles, wet pasta, and for blending wheat for pan breads in Nigeria. South Africa is a smaller market than Nigeria, but annual per capita wheat consumption is the highest in the sub-Saharan region. South Africa produces about half of its annual wheat consumption. Before their time in Kansas, the team visited the port of Corpus Christi, Tulsa Port of Catoosa, export elevators in Texas, and a wheat farm in Oklahoma.
One thing that's on everyone's mind is trade. Trade negotiations, trade disputes, NAFTA, China, and tariffs have all been in the news and highly politicized. But what do we know? We know tariffs are essentially taxes that raise prices for consumers. U.S. tariffs on Chinese products will raise the price to U.S. manufacturers and consumers, and Chinese tariffs on pork and grain sorghum will force their consumers to pay more or buy less. We know producers get hurt too. Chinese steel and solar panel manufacturers and American farmers who rely on exports to China will lose sales. China's 25% tariff on pork and pork products will most definitely impact U.S. farmers, and while short-lived, China's anti-dumping case and 179% sorghum tariff disrupted transportation, shut off markets, weakened basis, and as our nation's largest sorghum grower, hurt Kansas farmers. In Kansas, we have a comparable advantage in agriculture. Our $4 billion plus in exports each year drives economic growth. According to a U.S. Grains Council study, Kansas grain and product exports supported $783 million in gross state product, and more importantly, 8,900 jobs located across the state. In fact, every $1 million in Kansas exports supports 5.8 jobs and $500,000 in gross state product. Clearly, the U.S. needs to be strong, but trade should be a topic negotiated, not disputed, not disrupted, and definitely not taxed. Lastly, as the U.S. renegotiates agreements and engages in trade spats, we're losing our reputation as a reliable supplier. Other countries are forging new agreements without us, and the U.S. is losing its ability to influence global trade rules. And this all comes at the worst time for Kansas farmers, who are experiencing increasing drought, rising interest rates, and projections that 2018 will be the fourth year in a row of both depressed commodity prices and income on the farm.
Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source, agview.net.
What if U.S. soybean oil were an industry sensation? If end users started asking for it by name? That future is here. The time is now. To meet customer demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in varieties that produce oil with increased functionality. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source, agview.net.
What does a brighter, more sustainable future look like in our cities and towns, and how do we get there? When New York needed an alternative fuel source to reduce carbon emissions, the city found what it needed in biodiesel made from U.S. soybean oil.
Many seed companies claim to offer the latest genetics, but how many have tested those genetics in soils just like yours? The Oldie Seed Know to Grow research program has fully tested the latest seed genetics in soils that are right in your neighborhood. The Oldie Seed Know to Grow program can recommend the best performing hybrids from technologies like Enlist, Extend, and LibertyLink that will optimize the yield and profit of every acre on your farm. Contact Oldie Seed today.
The Checkoff-funded Beef Quality Assurance Program launched a new training and certification initiative last fall for cattle transportation. Known as Beef Quality Assurance Transportation, it provides cattle producers and haulers comprehensive training. Numerous transporters already have become certified through the program. In fact, of the 700 BQA transportation certifications across the country, Kansas leads the nation, followed by Texas, Colorado, Iowa, and Pennsylvania. In addition to hosting a few online training webinars, the Beef Checkoff in Kansas hosted an in-person training for truckers from one of the state's largest packing plants in early June. Transportation quality assurance plays a critical role in the health and welfare of cattle. The proper handling and transport of cattle can reduce sickness in calves, prevent bruises, and improve the quality of meat for consumers. Online and in-person training for BQA transportation is offered in two different modules, one for the farmer-rancher and one for professionals. Farmer-rancher modules focus on the use of stock trailers and smaller loads of cattle that beef and dairy cattle producers typically might haul themselves. The professional modules focus on the use of tractor trailers and larger loads hauled longer distances. Producers or professional drivers who would like to learn more or become certified should visit bqa.org.
Good morning. I'm Cody Wintersheet with Paragon Ag Advisors. In terms of the grain markets, thankfully the month of June has come to a close, although July hasn't started out much better. Unfortunately, for a month that from a seasonal perspective is usually a good, if not great month for marketing, it started out under pressure. Of course, it obviously finished in even worse shape. In a little over a month's time, it's quite the task to find anything that's real bullish now. Even though it does have the look and feel of a sky is falling event, now is most certainly not the time to panic and make any major decisions. Times like these can induce highly emotional decision making, which can have devastating outcomes. It's no different really than letting emotions talk yourself out of a good sale or heads decision because you think it might go higher. Keep in mind, this isn't a call to just sit idle or stick your head in the sand either. Now is the time to take a step back and reevaluate your plan as well as the market. Readjust sales and hedge targets accordingly. Sometimes doing nothing is just fine to do, and other times it can be the worst thing, if for nothing else the mental state and anxiety it puts on you. Unfortunately, at these levels, anything you do will not feel very good, that is for sure. However, there are some marketing tools out there that one could utilize to take some action, but not be a highly emotional, definitive sale either, so that you will still have some opportunity to improve. Of course, I'm referring to options, and hopefully they would let one rest a little easier in these crazy times we're experiencing. Have a great day.
That's our show this week. To learn more about cattletrace.org, that website is up and active. You can also be social with us online, kansasagreport.net, or on social media. Next week, we'll come to you from a wheat field in western Kansas and see how things turned out in the northwest side of the state. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching the Kansas Ag Report. We'll see you next week. Agriculture information on your computer or mobile device. News and views on grains, livestock, policy, and opinions from newsmakers can be found by liking AgView on Facebook, and on Twitter, follow AgView News, a reliable and relevant source, agview.net.
Closed captioning brought to you by
The Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers. KansasSoybeans.org.
Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farmers and ranchers since 1919. KFB.org. Kansas Wheat Commission, leaders in the adoption of profitable innovations for wheat. Online at kswheat.com. Kansas Livestock Association, supporting our members' business interests to meet consumers' demands. KLA.org.
Spring is sprung, and Premier Farm and Home has what you need to keep your yard crabgrass free throughout the season. With a complete line of pre-emergents, you can stop crabgrass before it starts. Premier Farm and Home, 900 Southwest University Boulevard, or find them on the web at heycow.com.
What if U.S. soybean oil were an industry sensation? If end users started asking for it by name? That future is here. The time is now. To meet customer demands, the Soybean Checkoff is investing in varieties that produce oil with increased functionality. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture, represents grassroots agriculture. The state's largest and most powerful farm organization stands up for its members through leadership development, agriculture education, legal defense, environmental advocacy, farm safety, and risk management. Members also enjoy money-saving benefits. To join our organization today or to learn more, go to www.kfb.org or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
The producer-funded Kansas Wheat Innovation Center was built to get improved varieties into the hands of farmers faster. Kansas Wheat, farmers advancing their future through wheat genetics research.